Hi everyone, it's Mrs. Summer here. I'm here to discuss Lesson 102, solving 1 and 2 step linear equations. In this lesson, students will be able to solve 1 and 2 step equations by using the opposite of a constant, and solve 1 and 2 step equations by using the reciprocal of a coefficient. If you recall from previous math courses, the opposite of a constant has the opposite sign of the constant. For example, the opposite of 5 is negative 5. The opposite of negative 1/2 is positive 1/2. The reciprocal of a coefficient is the number when multiplied by the coefficient equals 1. So for example, the reciprocal of 9 is 1 over 9. The reciprocal of negative 1/2 is negative 2. So in one-step equations, we're solving for a variable, in this case x. So we have x plus 4 equals 5. We can represent this equation visually. So over here, we have x plus 4 equals 5. So I have x as a rectangle, and my constants, 4 as 4 different cubes. We can add negative cubes to both sides to cancel out this 4. So we add a negative cube, a negative cube, a negative cube, a negative cube, and what we do to one side of the equation, we must do to the other. So I have another 4 negative cubes over here. So what is left is my 1. I made a mistake. If you've noticed over here, after I canceled, I didn't write. We're going to cross this off. X is supposed to be equal to 1. 1 is left over. So another way, and probably a much faster way to solve this problem, is for x plus 4 equals 5, we're going to use the opposite of the constant on both sides of the equation. Now the opposite of the constant that we're using is going to be the constant that is on the same side of the equation as the variable. So the opposite of positive 4 is negative 4. So what I do to one side of the equation, I must do to the other. So then I simplify and I get x is equal to 1. So here's another example. The mathematical way to solve for x minus 3 is equal to 4. We have to use the opposite of a constant on both sides of the equation. So the opposite of negative 3, because negative 3 is on the same side as the variable, is positive 3. So if I'm adding 3 to both sides to make that 0, I'm going to add 3 to this side. So 4 plus 3 is 7. So x equals 7. Here's a different type of one-step linear equation. This time, we're not adding or subtracting anything from the constant. We're either multiplying or dividing something by the constant by something. So solve for x equals 12. So my 4x is equal to 12. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of a coefficient. Another way of saying that is the inverse of a coefficient. So my reciprocal of my coefficient is 1 over 4. So I can multiply 1 over 4 times 4x. And if I do it to this side of the equation, I must do it to this side. And I have 12 times 1 over 4. An easier way of writing this is I'm going to divide both sides by 4, which is what I have right here. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 12 divided by 4 is 3. So x equals 3. Here's another example. We are multiplying our variable by 1/3. So 1/3 x equals 5. So I start with my 1/3 x equals 5. Now my reciprocal of my coefficient, the reciprocal of 1/3 is 3 over 1. So 3 over 1 times 1/3, x is equal to 5 times 3 over 1. So another way of writing that would be multiplying both sides by 3. So 3 over 1, that equals 1. 3 over 1 times 1/3 is equal to 1. 5 times 3 is 15. So x is equal to 15. So here's a few examples that I would like you guys to take the time and try and solve. So let's solve for x. X minus 5 is equal to 10. Well, my constant, this is a variable minus a constant. So I'm going to take the opposite of a constant. So I'm going to add 5 because the opposite of negative 5 is positive 5. If I do it to this side of the equation, I must do it to this side of the equation. So I'm left with x is equal to 15. So in this example, solve for x. I have 1/4 x equals 5. So I'm going to take the reciprocal of my coefficient, So my reciprocal of the coefficient here is 4 over 1. And I'm going to multiply it. So I'm going to multiply 4 over 1 on this side, because what I do to one side, I must do to the other. So this becomes 1 and 5 times 4. So I have x is equal to 20. So for this example, solve for x, negative 6x is equal to 42. I'm going to do the same reciprocal of my coefficient. Okay. Then my reciprocal of negative 6, my reciprocal is negative 1 over 6. So I'm going to multiply by negative 1 over 6. So another way, I could just divide by negative 6 on both sides. Let's see. So if I divide by negative 6 on both sides, negative 6 divided by negative 6 is just 1. And 42 divided by negative 6 is negative 7. So x is equal to negative 7. Remember, this negative sign is a part of the coefficient. So you have to divide by the reciprocal of the coefficient. So divide by 6, divide by negative 6, x is equal to negative 7. So here we're at two-step linear equations. So solve for x. 2x plus 5 is equal to 11. Now we have two steps. We have a coefficient and we also have a constant. With two-step linear equations, we always do the opposite of the constant before the reciprocal of a coefficient. So it's basically the inverse or the reverse order of operations. So I'm going to take my opposite of the constant first. So I'm going to subtract 5 from both sides. So I'm left with 2x is equal to 6. Now I'm going to do the reciprocal of my coefficient. I'm going to divide each side by 2. Because the reciprocal of 2 is 1/2. So dividing it by 2, so I'm left with x is equal to 3. 6 divided by 2 is 3. So here's another chance for you guys to work out some examples for yourself. For this example, solve for x. X divided by 4 minus 6 is equal to negative 5. So I'm going to start up at the top. So I have my x over 4 minus 6 is equal to negative 5. I'm going to add 6 to both sides first. My opposite of my constant first. Then I'm left with x over 4 is equal to 1. So then I'm going to multiply, I'm going to multiply by my reciprocal. So this cancels to 1, and I'm left with x is equal to 4. This example, solve for x, so I'm going to cross that off. So solve for x. 9x minus 7 is equal to negative 7. I'm going to add 7 to both sides, and I'm left with 9x is equal to 0. I'm going to divide each side by 9, and I'm left with x is equal to 0. For this last example, solve for v. Negative 4 is equal to 4 plus v over 5. Now, my constant and my variables are written on the right side instead of the left. I'm still going to do my opposite of a constant first. So I'm left with negative 8 is equal to v over 5. I'm going to multiply by my reciprocal is 5 over 1. Multiply by that reciprocal, 5 over 1. And I'm left with negative 40 is equal to v.